For 8 years, I sent my parents $2,850 every single month because they told me my father's business had collapsed and his medical bills were swallowing them alive. My name is Tamsin Vale. I am a senior fraud examiner in Denver. And I should have known better than anyone that money always leaves a trail. But I never thought the trail would begin with my sister accidentally texting me a photo of my entire family at a $500 a plate dinner I was never invited to. Then I zoomed in, saw my father's business card on the receipt, and realized the company I had been paying to save was alive enough to buy wine. Chapter 1. The photo that wasn't meant for me. The photo came in a little after 10 on a cold January night in Denver, when my apartment was quiet enough for every small sound to feel personal. I had just come home from Meridian Forensic Advisory, where I spent my days reading the kind of financial lies people thought were clever, until someone like me opened a spreadsheet. Reimbursement fraud, shell vendors, executive embezzlement hidden behind polite invoices and vague explanations. That was my world. Numbers, documents, patterns, the tiny places where a store stopped matching itself. My laptop was still open on the coffee table. My coat was still over the back of the chair. I had kicked off one heel but not the other, which tells you exactly how tired I was. I was 36 years old, senior fraud examiner by title, professional skeptic by training, and that night I wanted nothing more complicated than tea, a shower, and sleep. Then my phone lit up. The message was from my younger sister, Leora Vale Maddox. There was no text with it. No hey, no look at dad, no wish you were here. Just an image dropped into our private thread like a mistake. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. Leora always added words, too many sometimes. Heart emojis, little updates about her kids, complaints about clients, photos with captions even when the caption was obvious. A photo from Leora without a single word attached did not feel casual. It felt misdirected. I almost did not open it. Then I did. My father was laughing in the center of a long table at the Marlowe Room in Boulder, a restaurant I knew mostly from business magazines and client dinners I never ordered for myself. Soft gold lighting, white tablecloth, heavy wine glasses, plates arranged like art. A dessert plate sat in front of him with a candle burning low, and Raymond Vale looked happier than I had seen him look in years. My mother, Marla, sat beside him in a navy dress I had never seen before. Her hair was done, her pearls were on, and she had that polished expression she used when she wanted the world to believe everything in her life was exactly where she had placed it. My brother Grant was raising a glass from the other side of the table, smiling like the favorite son in every family photo I remembered from childhood. Leora sat next to her husband, Derek Maddox, leaning toward the camera with her perfect realtor smile. Aunt Bev was there. Uncle Pete was there. Whitney Cole was there. A few cousins, a few spouses, familiar faces from holidays where I was usually told everyone had kept things small this year. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. The first hurt was not the money. Not yet. The first hurt was seeing my family arranged around a table I had not even known existed for the evening. My father's birthday, or something close to it. A celebration, a family dinner. The kind of thing someone should have called me about. The kind of thing that should have included a simple question. Could you drive over from Denver? Can you make it Friday? Dad would love to see you, no one had asked. No one had forgotten to ask either. At 36, you learn the difference between being forgotten and being deliberately left out. Forgotten has a softness to it. This did not. I sat up on the couch with one shoe still on and stared at the picture until the room around me seemed to fall away. The Marlowe Room was not a casual place. Their tasting menu alone ran around $375 a person. Add wine pairings, tax, service charges, tips, and suddenly you were in the kind of dinner people casually called $500 a plate because saying the actual math out loud made it feel worse. 2 weeks earlier, my father had sighed into the phone and told me things were still tight. Things are still tight, sweetheart. That was his line. Quiet. Tired. Practiced enough to feel natural. I had heard it for years. Usually right before I reassured him that the transfer would go through on time. The transfer, $2,850 a month. every month, since April of 2017. I had started sending it when Vale Commercial Kitchens, my father's company, supposedly almost collapsed after losing a major client. Then came my mother's tears, my father's medical bills, the stress, the age, the fear. I was 28 when I set up the autopay. I told myself it would be temporary. Temporary had become nearly 8 years. I looked again at the table. The wine, the plates, the candle. My mother's dress, Grant's glass in the air. Maybe someone else paid, I told myself. Maybe this was a rare gift from a client. Maybe Aunt Bev covered it. Maybe Leora and Derek treated everyone. I was good at building generous explanations for people I loved. I had been doing it most of my adult life, but my job had trained me to distrust the one detail that did not fit. And in that photo, my eye found it before my heart was ready. At the far edge of the table, just behind my father's elbow, a black check folder lay open. A receipt stuck out at an angle. On top of the folder sat a card catching the restaurant light. I leaned closer. Then I pinched the screen and zoomed. The receipt sharpened just enough for the numbers to come alive. I could not read every line, but I could read enough. Multiple tasting menus, wine pairing, service charge, tax, tip. The total was just under $4,860. I stared at it for a long second, waiting for my brain to reject what my eyes were seeing. It did not. Then I zoomed again, this time on the card. It was not just some black credit card. Not one of those dramatic pieces of plastic people use to pretend they are richer than they are. It was a premium business rewards card. The embossed name caught the light at an angle, but I could read it. Raymond Vale. Under it, smaller but clear enough, was the business name. Vale Commercial Kitchens, LLC. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. That company was the reason I had paid. That company was the original wound, the collapse, the emergency, the thing my father said had taken him down and left him too proud to ask for help, while somehow still accepting it every month. In my mind, Vale Commercial Kitchens lived like a damaged thing in a hospital bed, surviving on my automatic transfers and my mother's anxious phone calls. But there it was, not in memory, not in crisis, not in some old document from 2017. It was sitting on a white tablecloth in Boulder, paying for wine. My hand went cold around the phone. I did not cry. I think part of me wanted to, because tears would have made the moment familiar. Tears would have meant I was hurt, and I understood hurt. What came over me instead was colder than hurt. It was the first clean edge of clarity. The worst part was not that my parents had money. The worst part was that I had been funding a family that did not even make room for me at the table. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Leora, sorry. Wrong chat. I read it 3 times. Wrong chat. Not wrong person. Not sorry. I meant to send that to Mom. Wrong chat, which meant there was another conversation. A family conversation. A place where photos like this were shared, dinners were planned, birthdays were celebrated, and nobody had to remember not to include me because I had never been there to begin with. A strange calm settled over me. I did not call my father. I did not text my mother. I did not ask Leora why I was not invited, because I already knew people like my family could turn a simple question into a trial, where somehow I became the unreasonable one. So I did what I knew how to do. I saved the photo. I took screenshots of the receipt, the card, the table, my father's face, my mother's dress, Grant's raised glass, Leora's smile. Then I set the phone down on the coffee table and opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark apartment. My unfinished work files were still there, full of strangers' frauds and strangers' lies. I closed them one by one. Then I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Vale Family Review. Plain, dry, almost boring. For the first time in nearly 8 years, I did not feel like the daughter trying to save her family. I felt like a fraud examiner, and the first person I was going to audit was my father. Chapter 2. The daughter who paid quietly. The first file I opened was not a bank statement. It was a memory. April of 2017 came back to me with the kind of precision grief gives ordinary days. I was 28 then, still new enough at Meridian Forensic Advisory to feel proud every time I used my badge to get into the building. I was not rich, but for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. I had a little house fund, Not much, but enough to make me browse Lakewood townhouses on Zillow during lunch breaks. I had a saved search, a price ceiling, and a private promise that I would own something with my name on the deed before I turned 35. Then my father called. It was a Tuesday evening. I remember because I was making boxed pasta in my apartment and pretending I did not miss having a real dining table. My phone rang, and Raymond Vale's name appeared on the screen. My father was not a casual caller. He believed phone calls should have a purpose, and for most of my life, that purpose had been instructions, corrections, or some version of advice I had not asked for. But that night, his voice was different. Small, rough, almost embarrassed. "Tamsin," he said, and even the way he used my name made me put the spoon down. "I didn't want to worry you," that was how he started. Not with the problem, with the burden of my knowing it. He told me Vale Commercial Kitchens had lost a major client, a regional restaurant chain that had folded almost overnight. They owed him money. They canceled pending equipment orders. A service contract disappeared. Then another vendor delayed payment. Then his line of credit tightened. Then he had to let 2 technicians go. He sent documents, real ones, an email terminating a contract, a vendor loss notice, a payroll adjustment, a couple of pages showing ugly cash flow gaps. My father had always been proud, sometimes unbearably so, and seeing that pride cracked made the documents feel even more convincing. Then my mother got on the phone. Marla Vale had a gift for making panic sound like love. Her voice trembled in exactly the places that made you want to reach through the phone and fix something. "Your father isn't sleeping," she said. "He won't admit it, but I hear him walking around at 3 in the morning." "What happened?" I asked. "Is it just the business?" There was a pause, then a small breath, then the other truth. "He had that procedure last month. The insurance covered most of it, but there's still a bill. About $6,400 out of pocket. And with the business like this, I just don't know how we're supposed to breathe." That bill was real. That was the part I would come back to later, again and again. The beginning was not fake. The beginning had paper, dates, numbers, fear. My father's company really had been hit. My mother really did have a medical bill on the counter. If they had lied from the first sentence, maybe I would have caught it. But they did not. They built the lie on something solid enough to stand on. My mother did not ask for money directly. That was not her style. She just let the silence fill with my responsibility. "Bokon konguduk," she whispered. "I don't know what next month looks like." I heard myself say, "I can help for a while." My father protested when she put him back on. "No, Tamsin, I'm not taking money from my daughter." But he did not say no the way a person says no when they mean it. He said it the way a proud man says no while leaving the door unlocked. "It's temporary," I told him, "just until you get back on your feet." I opened my banking app while still on the phone. I calculated what I could send without collapsing my own budget. Rent, utilities, student loan, groceries, gas, savings. The number that hurt but did not kill me was $2,850. "I can send $2,850 a month," I said. "For now." My mother started crying. "Oh, honey," she said, "you're the only one we can count on." I did not hear the trap in that sentence then. I heard love. I heard trust. I heard that I mattered. The first month, I felt relieved. The transfer went through, and I told myself I had bought my parents a little heir. The second month, I felt grown, responsible, useful in a way that had weight. By the 6th month, I had adjusted my life around that number. By the second year, it no longer felt like help. It felt like part of who I was. I stopped adding to my house fund. The Lakewood townhouse I had saved on Zillow sold that summer. I remember staring at the listing after it changed to pending, then sold, then disappeared. A year later, similar places cost $40,000 more. I told myself the market was crazy anyway. When my college roommate invited me to Charleston for a long weekend, I said work was slammed. That was partly true. Work was always slammed. But the real reason was that flights, hotel, food, and one missed overtime weekend would make the transfer hurt too much. My Subaru crossed 200,000 miles, and I patted the dashboard like it was a loyal old dog instead of a warning light with wheels. At Meridian, I took the ugly cases nobody wanted on weekends, divorce audits where people hid money with the precision of surgeons, embezzlement files with 10,000 tiny receipts, reimbursement fraud that made my eyes burn at midnight. Overtime made the transfer easier to survive, so I said yes until people started assuming I always would. When friends asked why I never went anywhere anymore, I gave the answer that made me sound noble instead of trapped. Family comes first. And I believed it. There were signs, of course. There are always signs when you know the ending. I offered to come up to Fort Collins and sit down with Mom, go through the bills, build a debt plan, call the hospital, talk to insurance, negotiate payment terms. No, she said every time. You've done enough. I don't want to turn you into the family accountant. That sounded considerate if you did not listen too closely. When I asked whether Grant was helping, she sighed. Grant has a wife, kids, a lot on his plate. You're just steadier, sweetheart. You've always been the strong one. The strong one. I used to take that as a compliment. I did not understand yet that in some families, strong just means easier to load. At work, around that same time, Elias Porter handed me a corporate fraud case involving a CFO who had siphoned money through a series of small exceptions. A vendor adjustment here. A temporary advance there. A reimbursement that made sense the first time and became theft by the 50th. Elias tapped the file with 2 fingers and said, "Fraud rarely starts as a giant lie. It starts as an exception people stop questioning." I wrote that in my case notes. I did not write it in my life. Years passed. The transfers continued. My father's voice stayed tired. My mother's worry stayed perfectly timed. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking when temporary would end. Now, sitting in my Denver apartment with Leora's accidental photo still glowing on my phone, I saw another pattern that had been there all along. I had not been invited to much of anything. Not official birthday dinners, not ski weekends, not big brunches, not the kind of family nights people remember to post about. My contact with my parents had narrowed into check-ins and crisis updates, little emotional invoices that arrived just often enough to keep me paying. I picked up my phone and opened Leora's thread. My thumb hovered for a long moment before I typed. "Can you add me to the family group chat? I feel like I keep missing things." The message showed delivered. 1 minute passed. Then 5, then 12. Finally, 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Her reply came in at 11:18 p.m. "Wait, you're not in Vail Table?" I stared at those words until they stopped looking like words. Vail Table. They had a name for it. A room I had never been invited into. A place where dinners were planned, photos were shared, jokes were made, and my absence had been normal long enough that my sister did not even know it was an absence. No one had forgotten me once. They had built a whole digital table without a seat for me. I did not ask Leora why. I did not give her a chance to say she thought I had been added, or that Mom handled those things, or that I was always so busy anyway. I had spent too many years accepting explanations before I saw evidence. So I opened Vail Family Review. I created the first spreadsheet. I named the first tab transfers. And that night, I began with the only witness in my family that had never learned how to cry, deflect, or lie to me. My own bank statements. Chapter 3. The records that didn't love anyone. I downloaded every transfer first. Not because it was the biggest proof, but because it was mine. My statements did not require permission from my mother. They did not need my father's version of events. They did not soften their voice or say they did not want to worry me. They just sat there in neat rows, cold and obedient, waiting to be read. I logged into my bank account and pulled everything from April of 2017 through January of 2025. The export took less than a minute. Nearly 8 years of my life compressed into a spreadsheet file so small it could sit unnoticed on a desktop. When it opened, the first thing I saw was the repetition. $2,850, same recipient. Same note, same date near the beginning of each month. I created columns because columns made pain easier to handle. Date, amount, recipient, note, running total. I did not scroll to the bottom right away. Some part of me knew that if I saw the final number too soon, I would stop feeling the individual months, and the individual months mattered. April 2017 was the first one. That was the month I thought I was buying my parents' heir. May 2017, I skipped replacing my mattress. June 2017, I told myself Lakewood would still be there later. September 2018, I paid for another repair on the Subaru, instead of a down payment on something newer. March 2019, I worked until almost midnight for 3 Saturdays in a row. August 2020, I declined a weekend trip and told my friends I was just tired. Every line had a life beside it. A small no I had given myself so I could give my parents a yes. By the time I reached 2021, my throat had gone tight, so I stopped looking at the bank for a while and opened a browser. I started with the Colorado Secretary of State website. Vale Commercial Kitchens LLC was not difficult to find. That annoyed me more than I expected. I had spent years imagining my father's business as something barely breathing in the dark, some wounded thing too fragile to ask questions about. But there it was, active, clean, easy to search. I did not use anything from Meridian. I knew better than that. I used public records, archived pages, basic business filings, and a paid public search subscription I kept for personal background checks. Nothing private. Nothing I would not be willing to explain out loud. The first documents confirmed what I already knew. In 2017, the company had been hit. A regional restaurant chain had folded, and Vale Commercial Kitchens had lost a major account. That part was real. My father had not invented the beginning, but the trail did not stop there. By 2018, filings showed restructuring. By 2019, the website was active again, advertising inventory and service contracts. Archived pages showed new equipment lines. Public vendor references tied the company to a local brewery group. A UCC filing showed an old equipment loan had been released. Old hiring posts from 2020 and 2021 showed they were looking for service technicians. I sat back and stared at the screen. Records did not show me every dollar they made, but they showed me enough. The business was not dead, not even close. I remembered my father's tired voice from 2 weeks earlier. Things are still tight, sweetheart. I wondered how long a man could keep saying tight while paying for wine pairings with a business rewards card. Then I searched for the medical side. That was harder because medical debt in America does not always leave a public footprint. I knew that. I was not stupid enough to think no public record meant no bill ever existed. But my mother had not described a normal bill. She had described a financial catastrophe that had swallowed them for years. So I checked what could be checked: bankruptcy records, civil judgments, collection liens, public court records, property liens. Anything that would match the kind of long-term disaster Marla had used to keep me worried. Nothing fit. There was no sign of the ongoing crisis she had described. No public judgment. No bankruptcy. No lien. No trail that matched a family drowning in hospital debt year after year. The first bill had been real. That mattered. $6,400 after my father's procedure. I could still see the number because my mother had repeated it like a prayer. But after that, the story stretched far beyond the evidence. I heard her voice in my head. Your father's heart can't take more stress. That was the hook she used when I asked too many questions. Not anger. Not accusation. His heart, his sleep, his age, his pride. She never said, send the money or you are a bad daughter. She was too careful for that. She just placed my father's health in my hands and waited for me to tighten my grip. I kept going. Property records were next. I do not know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe a refinance. Maybe some small home equity loan that would at least make their panic make sense. Instead, Routt County gave me the thing that made the room tilt, a deed recorded in 2021. Raymond Vale and Marla Vale, a 2-bedroom vacation condo in Steamboat Springs. Purchase price, approximately $419,000, no recorded mortgage. No deed of trust. I read it once, then again, then a third time more slowly, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. They did not. Steamboat Springs. A resort town. Ski weekends. Summer escapes. The kind of place people buy into when they have more than enough. Not when they are counting dollars and quietly accepting monthly help from a daughter driving a Subaru with over 200,000 miles on it. The HOA estimate alone was around $690 a month, before property taxes, insurance, utilities, and everything else ownership required. I did not tell myself that my money bought that condo. I could not prove that, not from a deed. But I could prove something simpler and uglier. In 2021, while they were still taking $2,850 a month from me, because they said they were barely staying afloat, my parents bought a vacation property. Steamboat was not just a condo. It was the house I did not buy. It was the vacation I did not take. It was my 30s sitting in somebody else's property record. My phone buzzed before I could fully absorb it. Leora had added me to Vale Table. For a second, I just stared at the notification. The name looked almost cheerful, casual, like a family joke, like a place everyone belonged. I opened it. The history loaded slowly, then all at once photos, years of them. My father at the Marlowe room with a candle in front of him. My mother holding a mimosa at Christmas brunch in Fort Collins. Grant in a ski jacket near Steamboat, grinning with Derek beside him. Leora taking selfies with Marla. Aunt Bev bundled in a scarf. Uncle Pete holding a plate of barbecue. Whitney laughing in someone's kitchen. A dozen moments I had never been told existed. The captions hurt more than the pictures. Dad's favorite table again. Same time next year. Steamboat weekend was exactly what we needed. Then I found my mother's messages. Don't bother Tamsin. She doesn't really do family dinners anymore. She's always so busy. She does her own thing. I read those lines until the apartment seemed too quiet. They had not simply excluded me. They had explained me away. To the family, I had not been missing. I had been distant. Busy, too independent, maybe a little cold. Maybe the kind of daughter who sent money, but did not come around because she thought she was better than everyone else. They had taken my seat at the table and then told everyone I had chosen not to sit down. I called Aunt Bev before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the third ring, bright and breathless. Tamsin, honey. I was hoping you were all right. Leora said she added you to the chat. I thought you were already in there. Apparently not, I said. There was a pause. I kept my voice even. Bev, can I ask you something without you trying to protect anybody? Another pause. Shorter this time. All right. Who paid for Dad's dinner? She laughed softly, confused. Your dad did, I think. He made a whole joke about being comfortable enough to spoil us for once, though he says that every year now. Every year. I closed my eyes. He talked about the condo too, she went on. Said Steamboat was good for your mother's nerves. And there was something about a coast trip. Maybe a cruise later this year. I don't remember all of it. You thought they were doing well? Tamsin. Everybody thought they were doing well. Her voice changed. Why? I told her not everything, just enough. The transfers. The amount. The years. Bev said nothing for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she whispered, You're still sending them money? Yes. Oh, honey. That nearly broke me more than the records had. Then her voice lowered. Raymond asked Pete for $7,500 in 2021. Said it was medical bridge money. Pete gave it to him because, well, it was your father. I opened my eyes. Another number. Another person. Another little exception people stopped questioning. Bev went quiet again, then added, I'm going to ask a few questions, carefully, not to stir things up. Just because if your father asked Pete, I need to know whether there were others. Bev, I said, please don't make yourself a target. Honey, she said softly, you've been the target for years. Let me at least look around. I did not know what to say to that. I don't know if you were the only one, Bev said carefully. I'm sorry, I truly didn't know. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. After we hung up, I went back to the spreadsheet. Only then did I scroll to the bottom, 984 transfers, $2,850 each. The total appeared in the cell like a verdict, $267,900. I said it out loud to the empty apartment. $267,900. The number did not become more real when I spoke it. I did. It was the down payment I never made, the vacations I never took, the weekends I worked until my eyes blurred, the furniture I did not buy. The years I told myself being useful was the same thing as being loved. I printed everything. the bank transfer summary, the business activity timeline, the medical mismatch notes, the steamboat property record, the Vale table screenshots, my notes from the call with Bev. Then I made one clean page at the front. What I was told, what the records show, what it cost me. I slid the pages into a folder and pressed my palm flat over the cover, as if I could keep the whole thing from shaking. That was when my phone rang. My father's name filled the screen, Raymond Vale. The February transfer had not come through. Chapter 4. When the tap went dry, I let the phone ring twice before I answered, because if I picked up too quickly, he would hear that I had been waiting for the consequence. "Hey, sweetheart," my father said. His voice was careful. Not warm, not angry yet. Careful, the way a person sounds when he is trying to touch a hot stove without admitting he already smells smoke. "Hi, Dad." There was a small pause, just long enough for him to decide which version of himself to use. "Did something happen with your account?" he asked. The usual transfer didn't come through. 4 days earlier, I had logged into my bank app and canceled the auto pay for February. It had taken less than a minute. No ceremony, no warning, no long message explaining my pain. Just a few taps, a confirmation screen, and then the quietest ending 8 years of my life could have had. I did not tell him that. "I'm reviewing my finances," I said. He let out the sigh I knew too well. The old Raymond Vale sigh. Heavy, disappointed, patient in a way that made you feel like the unreasonable one for making him explain. "Well, I understand that," he said. "Everybody's reviewing their finances these days. Groceries, insurance, fuel, everything's going up. The business is still tight, sweetheart. You know how it is. Every little bit helps. Every little bit." $2,850 a month had become a little bit to the man who noticed its absence in 4 days. I looked at the folder on my kitchen table. Bank transfers, business records, medical mismatch notes, steamboat property record, Vale table screenshots. The truth was sitting 6 feet away from me, and my father was still talking like I was a daughter with no eyes. "I understand," I said. That was all I gave him. He waited for more. For reassurance. For the sentence I had trained him to expect. "Don't worry, Dad, I'll fix it. It'll be there tomorrow. I'm sorry." When I said nothing, his voice tightened. "Is something wrong?" I almost laughed, but there was no humor in me. "I'm just reviewing my finances," I repeated. He ended the call a minute later with a forced little chuckle and a line about checking in soon. I set the phone down and wrote one note on a yellow legal pad. Dad noticed in 4 days. 2 days later, my mother called. Marla did not mention money. My mother was more elegant than that. She built the room first, dimmed the lights, put guilt in the center, and let you walk toward it on your own. "Your father didn't sleep last night," she said. I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry to hear that." "He won't say anything, but I know him. Stress goes straight to his chest. You know what the doctor said about keeping his heart calm." There it was. His heart. For years, those 2 words had been enough to open my banking app faster than any invoice ever could. My father's heart had been the sacred object in the middle of the room, the thing no one could question without becoming cruel. This time, I stayed still. "Has he called his doctor?" I asked. My mother went quiet for half a second, irritated that I had answered with something practical instead of something obedient. "That's not the point, Tamsin. He needs peace. He needs to know his family is with him." Family was a word my mother used when she meant access. "I hope he rests," I said. Another pause. "Longer. You sound different." "I feel different." She did not ask what that meant. I think some part of her already knew. That night, Grant texted me. "Whatever is going on, don't do this right before Dad's birthday. Mom's been crying all morning." I stared at the screen, then typed back. "Do what?" His reply came fast. "You know what I mean. They count on you." I sat with that sentence for a long moment. Not love you. Not miss you. Not want you there. Count on you. So I asked the question that mattered. "How long have you known about the steamboat condo?" The typing bubbles appeared, vanished, appeared again. Then nothing. 5 minutes passed. Finally, Grant answered. "That's not the point." It was amazing how much a person could confess by refusing to answer. Grant did not know everything. I doubted he knew the full amount. I doubted he had seen the spreadsheet or understood the machinery behind the monthly transfers, but he knew enough. He knew our parents were not drowning. He knew there was a condo. He knew there were dinners. He knew there was a life happening without me, funded by a daughter he was now warning not to disrupt. Later that night, Bev called back with one more detail, and this one made Grant's silence look different. In 2022, Raymond had helped him with $11,800 in car debt. Marla had once mentioned it to Bev as a little transportation trouble, the kind of phrase families use when they want a number to sound smaller than it is. Now it looked different. Grant had not stayed silent because he was confused. He had stayed silent because the system worked for him. While I was being told our parents could barely breathe, my brother had accepted help from the same people quietly taking money from me. The next message came from Leora. I feel horrible. If I hadn't sent that picture, none of this would be happening. I read it once, then again. Poor Leora still thought the picture had caused the damage. Like the match had burned the house, not exposed the gas leak. I typed carefully. The picture didn't create this. She did not answer. The next morning, I met with Nadine Harper, a civil litigation attorney in Denver, whose office smelled like coffee, paper, and very expensive restraint. I did not know if I wanted a lawsuit. I only knew I wanted someone outside my family to look at the folder and tell me I was not imagining the shape of it. Nadine read quietly. She did not gasp. Good lawyers do not waste shock on things they can mark with a pen. When she finished, she folded her hands over the summary page. There are possible claims here, she said. Civil fraud, misrepresentation, unjust enrichment, depending on what else we could prove. My chest tightened. But the transfers were voluntary. There's no repayment agreement. Your parents could argue these were gifts. You would need to prove false representation, reliance, damages, and intent. That is possible in some cases. It is also expensive, slow, ugly, and emotionally brutal. I looked down at the number again, $267,900. So I just let them keep it? Nadine's face softened, but only slightly. I'm not telling you to let anything go. I'm telling you to understand the cost of chasing it. Sometimes the question is not whether you were wronged. You were. The question is how much more of your life you want to spend proving it to people who already know what they did. That sentence stayed with me. She told me to keep everything factual. No threats I was not prepared to follow. No accusations I could not support. If my parents tried to smear me, she could draft a demand letter or a cease and desist with the timeline attached. You are not powerless, she said, but you should be precise. Precision, I understood. 2 days later, Aunt Bev called. Tamsin, she said, her voice low. Your father's still having his birthday dinner at the Marlowe room. 66, big table, same private room. Of course he is. Leora said you should come this time. This time, as if a seat had simply opened up. An hour later, my mother called with a voice so sweet it might have been poured over broken glass. We really want you there, honey. Your father needs family around him. I looked at the folder on my desk. For nearly 8 years, they had managed my absence without difficulty. But the moment the money stopped, my presence suddenly became important again. I'll be there, I said. My mother exhaled like she had won something. That night, I made 3 clean sets of documents. The first held the transfer summary. 94 payments totaling $267,900. The second held a 1-page business timeline showing Vale Commercial Kitchens did not stay collapsed after 2017. The third held the supporting records, the medical mismatch notes, the steamboat condo deed, the lack of recorded mortgage or deed of trust, the HOA estimate, the Vale table screenshots, and my note about Uncle Pete's $7,500. On the first page, I wrote 3 headings: what I was told, what the records show, what it cost me. Then I called the Marlowe room. A man named Harlan Reeves answered with the smooth calm of someone used to difficult requests from wealthy people. I'll be attending a private dinner there this weekend, I said. I'd like to pay separately for my own meal. Quietly, if possible. That can be arranged, he said. Just ask for me when you arrive. I thanked him and hung up. On the night of the dinner, I stood in front of my mirror in a plain dark suit. Not festive, not dramatic, just clean lines, steady hands, and a folder in my bag that felt heavier than anything I had ever carried. I did not look like a daughter going to her father's birthday. I looked like a woman walking into the last room of an investigation. The drive from Denver to Boulder was dark and cold. The folder sat on the passenger seat, strapped in by nothing, held in place by its own weight. Halfway there, my phone lit up with a text from my mother. "Please don't upset your father tonight." I did not answer. I just looked at the road ahead and thought that tonight, for the first time in years, the person getting upset was not going to be me. Chapter 5. The birthday dinner where the lie lost its seat by the time I reached. The Marlowe room in Boulder. The private dining room was already glowing like a stage. Warm light, white tablecloth, polished silverware, wine already poured. My father sat at the head of the table, exactly where he liked to be. Raymond Vale, 66 years old, smiling like a man whose family had gathered because they adored him, not because half of them had been trained to protect his version of the truth. My mother sat beside him in pearls, her smile tight at the corners. Grant had his phone face down by his plate, but his eyes stayed low. Leora looked at me once, then away. Derek sat beside her, quiet in the way people get when they know silence is safer than honesty. Aunt Bev watched me carefully. Uncle Pete looked relaxed until he saw my folder. Whitney gave me a small wave, uncertain, like she was trying to decide which story about me was true. My father stood when he saw me. "There's my girl." He hugged me too hard, too publicly. I could smell his cologne and the red wine on his breath. For a second, I almost remembered being small enough to believe that being called his girl meant I belonged somewhere. Then I remembered the $267,900. Dinner began with all the little performances families do. When everyone knows something is wrong, but nobody wants to be the first to name it. Raymond ordered another wine pairing. Marla touched his sleeve and said, "We deserve one nice night." I nearly smiled. They had enjoyed plenty of nice nights. I had just never been invited to them. Leora leaned close when the server stepped away. "Are you mad at me?" I looked at her. "Not because of the photo." Her face changed, but I did not explain. Some truths need room to land. After dessert, Raymond rose with his glass. The candlelight caught the gray at his temples. He looked almost noble if you did not know what he had built that image on. 66 years, he said. "I've learned one thing. Family carries you. We've had tight years, hard years. Years when I didn't know how we'd make it. But the Vales always carry each other." He lifted his glass. "Things have been tight, but family carries you." That was when I stood. I did not raise my voice. I did not shake. I simply placed the first folder on the table. "I'd like to talk about who has been carrying whom." The room went still. I opened the folder to the first page. From April of 2017 through January of 2025, I transferred $2,850 a month to Raymond and Marla Vale. 94 transfers. Total amount, $267,900. The silence after that number had weight. Uncle Pete looked at my father. Whitney looked at my mother. Bev lowered her wineglass like she suddenly did not trust her hand. Leora went pale. Grant kept staring at his plate. I slid the bank summary toward my father. "You told me Vale Commercial Kitchens was barely surviving, and in 2017 that was partly true. But records show the business was active again after 2019. Filings, website activity, vendor references, UCC release, hiring posts, ongoing business activity." My father's jaw tightened. "You don't understand business. I understand records." His face flushed, but I turned the next page before he could build a speech. "Mom told me hospital bills were swallowing you. The first bill was real. The $6,400 after Dad's procedure was real. But there is no public judgment, no bankruptcy, no lien, no visible trace of the long-term medical catastrophe you described for years." Marla's eyes filled instantly. "You're humiliating us." "No," I said. "I'm documenting what happened." I placed the property record on the table next. Raymond and Marla Vale purchased a 2-bedroom vacation condo in Steamboat Springs in 2021. Purchase price, approximately $419,000. No recorded mortgage, no deed of trust. HOA around $690 a month before taxes and insurance. That same year, I was still sending money because I believed you were watching every dollar. That was the moment the dinner truly broke. The condo had a shape, a place, a price. It was harder to wave away than feelings. Then I laid out the Vale table screenshots. Birthday dinners, ski weekends, Christmas brunches, the Marlowe room year after year, steamboat captions. My mother's message printed in black ink. Don't bother Tamsin. She doesn't really do family dinners anymore. I looked at Marla. You didn't just keep me out of the room. You told everyone I chose not to be in it. Aunt Bev turned to Grant. You knew. Grant said nothing. He did not deny it. He did not ask what Bev meant. He just looked at his plate like silence could still protect him. It could not. Pet leaned forward slowly. Raymond, what about the $7,500 you borrowed from me in 2021? The medical bridge money. My father snapped. That has nothing to do with this. Pete's face hardened. That means it does. Whitney's voice was small but clear. Marla told me Tamsin thought she was better than the family. My mother did not look at her. Leora started crying. I didn't know it was like this. I turned to her and my voice softened, but only a little. You didn't build the lie, Leora, but you sat inside it. Derek lowered his head. He had been in that photograph. He had seen the card. He knew enough to understand why silence suddenly looked like participation. Then my mother reached for the only weapon she had left. You were the only one we could count on. For years, that sentence had made me feel chosen. That night, it finally sounded like what it was. No, Mom. I was the only one you made sure couldn't see what she was paying for. Her face collapsed. The first year was real, she whispered. Your father was scared. I was scared. Then things got better, and we didn't know how to tell you. The money kept coming. We told ourselves it was temporary. Then we told ourselves you were doing well. Then we told ourselves stopping would only hurt everyone. The first year was real, I said. The next 7 were a choice. My father stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. You ungrateful girl. You come into my birthday dinner with papers like some prosecutor? That money was a gift. I spoke to an attorney, I said. I'm not here to sue you tonight. But if you keep lying about me, this folder will not stay in the family. His mouth shut. I closed the folder. There will be no more $2,850. No autopay. No emergency transfer. No glitch. No little bit. No only one we can count on. A server appeared with a small check folder and placed it beside me. Harlan Reeves must have remembered. I put my card inside without looking at my father. I paid for my own meal because I would not let him claim. He bought me dinner with money he had trained me to send him. Then I looked at him one last time. Happy birthday, Dad. It was not a blessing. It was an ending. I walked out before anyone could vote on my pain. Bev followed me into the cold. Tamsin, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I believe you. She wiped under one eye. Pete needs the truth. So does Whitney. So do all of us. I did not cry until I reached my car. Even then, it was not a breakdown. It was my body realizing it no longer had to hold the table up. The smear campaign started 3 days later. My parents told people I had humiliated them over money, that I was cold, that I abandoned them as they got older. Bev sent the one-page summary to the people who needed it. Timeline, transfers, business records, condo record, screenshots. Their story died under the weight of receipts. Whitney apologized for believing I had chosen distance. Pete started asking Raymond about his $7,500. Grant suddenly found himself being asked whether he could help Mom and Dad now, and for once, the weight he had helped push onto me turned in his direction. Leora wrote again days later. I'm sorry we let them make you look absent when you were the one keeping them afloat. I did not forgive her that day. But I noticed that, finally, she was apologizing for the right thing. Without my $2,850 a month, my parents' lifestyle started making different sounds. The lifestyle had not been supported by their comfort. It had been supported by my silence. The cruise disappeared. The Marlowe room tradition stopped. The steamboat condo went onto a short-term rental site. Then, a few months later, Bev told me it was listed for sale. HOA, insurance, taxes, maintenance, all the numbers they had hidden behind family finally came due. My father called it an overreaction. I did not answer. It was not an overreaction. It was math. I created a new autopay that spring. Same amount, $2,850 a month. But this time, it went into my own house fund. By the end of 2025, I bought a small townhouse in Lakewood. Not a mansion, not a trophy. Just a quiet place with my name on the papers and no one else's emergency attached to the deed. I put the Vale family review folder in a storage box in my office. I did not burn it. I did not frame it. I did not open it every day. It stayed there as proof that it happened, and proof that it no longer owned me. Some peace is not given by family. Some peace is taken back. If you were me, would you have walked away, sued them, or made them sell the steamboat condo to pay back every dollar of that $267,900? And do you think I was the only person in that family they took money from?